Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Into the Weather Forecast by Agent Weather Forecast. I'm going to go ahead and just dive into the video here. Obviously, we have a very large and pretty large risk for severe weather today with a moderate risk for both wind and tornadoes. So we have a tornado-driven, a moderate risk in October, which is definitely not common whatsoever. I mean, this is extremely rare. I believe there's only been a handful amount of times that we've actually have had a tornado-driven moderate risk in October. I know one was in 2010, and I believe there's another one earlier within this the 21st century here. But I know for sure there's been at least some 15% moderate driven in October, I believe 26 in 2010. But this is a very rare event here because this is not only the main day. Obviously, then we have Tuesday. It's going to be a multi severe weather outbreak right now. So obviously, the event is about to unfold within a few hours. Already getting basically a CU field. Already getting as well the cold front has stalled. So we're seeing a huge, pretty high amount of confidence and as well kind of already really favorable conditions already developing here. As we obviously have very detailed convective data, but here's the moderate risk for downtown Oklahoma City, Norman, Moore, Oklahoma, all the way up to areas like Tulsa, Oklahoma, for example. So it's including much of central and eastern Oklahoma, including 3 million people, including, like I said, downtown Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Norman, Lawton, Oklahoma, and Broken Arrow. And then we have a very widespread enhanced, which actually goes all the way down to the DFW area and expanding all the way up into areas just outside Joplin into areas of western Arkansas. That includes around 7.6 million people. And then we obviously have a slight going all the way from basically central Texas all the way up to Missouri. But at that point, it would be kind of be more upscale. So I'm going to be really watching that just mainly for a linear mode and wind threat and even squall line at that point once it upscales. And then a marginal within 6.7 million people, including Austin, Shreveport, Little Rock. And so we have a slight risk there for Minnesota. But here's the tornado risk. Again, we have a 15% significant risk. As well, this 10% hatch has now moved all the way down to areas near Durant, Oklahoma, and as well near Paris, Texas. So this 50% hatch is including obviously downtown. So look at the significant severe actually includes around 4 million people, including Oklahoma City, as well Tulsa, Norman, Lawton, and Broken Arrow, and that's basically all the areas within the 15%. So I mean, the 15% includes basically the highest population across the plains here. Again, downtown Oklahoma City, downtown Norman, as well. There's most likely going to start. We're most likely to see a PDS tornado watch very soon here as this storm or as the initiation starts to unfold. But again, 15% hatched for around 3 million people basically, and that's absolutely mental. I mean, not only is a moderate, not common whatsoever in October, but a tornado-driven moderate is absolutely mental as well. It was originally tornado-driven, but now it's both tornado and wind-driven. But 10% includes now 8 million people from areas near DFW all the way into Arlington, Plano, Garland, Texas, as well into areas near Fayetteville, Arkansas, into as well areas just into southwestern Missouri, as we're going to be seeing potential for embedded supercells across the squall line, and then a 5% including as well Duluth, Minnesota, and that general vicinity, and then including Wichita Falls, Texas, Tyler, Texas, Waco, Texas, Kylene, Texas, and all the way down near all the way actually the 2% goes very well down to College Station. So gonna be seeing a pretty widespread tornado risk here, all the way from basically central Missouri into areas near central Texas. And again, it's now as well a moderate driven wind threat as well, with a 45 significant, including, of course, downtown Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Norman, Moore, Lawton, and Broken Arrow. And obviously, when you hear about Oklahoma City, Norman, Moore, all being within a 15% hatch, you just obviously get flashbacks to obviously the big ones like more 2013, etc. I mean, you just kind of get those flashbacks. You're obviously it's not gonna happen, but like it's like when you see like a tornado warning in Joplin, like it kind of just it reminds you of obviously the Joplin tornado. So seeing something like this kind of planning or kind of I guess unfolding across central Oklahoma is just something that you don't want to see whatsoever. And I hope people are taking precautions because it's going to be a very significant three three three-way thing, including obviously significant hail, extreme wind, and as well widespread potential frequent tornadoes. But looking at a 45 sig, including around 3 million people, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Norman, as well, including Edmond, Oklahoma, as well, with a 30% now becoming more widespread into DFW and all the way, of course, into areas in Missouri and Arkansas, where we have the enhanced driven wind threat, and then a 5%, or then a 15%, obviously, in those areas, and the slight risk. But as well, it hails as well, a 30% significant risk. But like I said yesterday, the SIG will most likely for the hail basically stay west of Oklahoma City and into Oklahoma City, because that's going to be seeing kind of the kind of more actually, I don't know what that is, but let me take that out. But as we're going to be seeing kind of the most really good lapse rates, etc. Obviously along the dry lands, we're going to be seeing the best hail chance and the best chance for some really good elevated base supercells that will produce both strong wind and as well pretty large hail. So that's going to be pretty common across areas near Lawn, Oklahoma, Edmond, Oklahoma, Midwest City, Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, and Norman. And then we see with that 30% actually spreading out as well further in towards the east central portion of the state. And then the SIG risk actually only includes around half, if not maybe just under half of that 30%. So it's going to be more of that chance for seeing 2-inch diameter hail, going to be more widespread into the very beginning of the event. So we're going to start off seeing those surface-based supercells, but as we start to see, obviously, that cold front lag, and as we go deeper into the warm sector, and be seeing that support within both the 850 and the 500 millibar jet, that's going to intersect, and that's going to really allow for those chances for as well surface-based supercells. And if that cold front does continue to obviously lag and stay stationary, it's going to allow for the chance for more frequent surface-based supercells, as well decrease or at least I guess delay the upscale growth. That's going to as well lead a bigger threat toward areas like Durant and as well even DFW. But yeah, this is obviously a very interesting event. Obviously as well, we do have that slight risk driven, of course, tomorrow. And then, of course, we have the enhanced risk for day 3. But obviously, today's video, I'm just going to be focusing on today's threat. So here's now a look at satellite here. Obviously, there we see kind of that overall frontal boundary. Obviously, there you see that northeast ejection. And there you see basically, this is kind of the overall, the jet basically. There you see that overall 500 millibar jet. And there you kind of see pretty dry conditions and clear conditions across the general vicinity. When you start to see those clear conditions a few hours ahead of the event, that is not good if you see clearing a few hours before the event, because if you start clearing, obviously it's going to allow for the chance for just kind of just a loaded gun situation there where the storms just go absolutely nuts. As well, it's going to allow for more instability and as well not going to prevent any washing of this warm sector. So there you see that CU field's basically right here. Obviously, as well, there you see the, like I said, 500 millibar jet ejecting toward the northeast, seeing around an 80 to 100 knot, obviously 500 millibar. And that's where we're going to start seeing these storms kind of developing on the CU field along the dry line, basically. Those are going to really become those surface-based supercells and be pretty large hail producers. And once they get deeper, basically along that warm front into the warm sector, they're going to go surface-based and become obviously a pretty large tornado threat. But there you see that CU field, again, seeing some pretty good initiation turning to develop there. I believe we have a few severe thunderstorm warnings as of now across Oklahoma, southwest Oklahoma. So we're going to start getting very interesting for Lawton, as well for, obviously as well for the, I'm trying to think of the city there, kind of just across, I'm trying to think of the city there, Lawton. That doesn't vicinity, but there you again, gonna start seeing initiation continue to increase as we get into the mid-afternoon. Starting to see that diurnal heating reaching its maximum. I'm gonna start seeing those dews reaching its maximum. So again, here's gonna be the main area of the warm sector. Actually, I'd say the main area of the warm sector is gonna be basically right here. So gonna really watch out for central Oklahoma, CE field developing. Very clear conditions, or mainly clear conditions. So definitely pretty concerned that we are seeing some clearing, or we saw some clearing earlier on, as well as starting to see kind of a frontal boundary, or kind of start to see that stationary boundary starting to form across the portion there of Oklahoma, but going to start getting really interesting in the next few hours. So we actually have a medical discussion right now, and this is definitely by far not the main. This is definitely not the main medical discussion, although it includes around half of the moderate risk here. So we do have increasingly moderate thunderstorm development by 5 to 7 o'clock Central Time. So right now it's 3 o'clock Central Time. So like I said, in the next few hours, we're going to start seeing some initiation. Of course, there's a dry line basically right here. And obviously there's kind of the stationary boundary basically as well with that cold front starting to stall. According to this medical discussion, the basic cold front is basically stalling near Wichita, and it's going to allow for the delay of upscale growth and of course seeing some pretty good dews right now. Actually, some really good dews right now, of course, into the 60s and even to the mid 60s as well. And of course, here there you see that kind of sharp deviation across that dry line right there. But there you see, of course, the cold front toward the south, dipping into New Mexico, and there you see that kind of main area, that main amped up part of the negative tilted trough, which is again start to eject across western Oklahoma and the northern Panhandle, Texas. But of course, again, watch out for posing risk for severe hail and increasing potential for a few tornadoes by early evening. So a possibility of a watch is 80%, which I think is pretty rather low. Honestly, I wouldn't doubt. I mean, I think a 95% would have been obviously pretty. Actually, more of a 90% I think would be more reasonable. But of course, I think we're most likely to see a PDS tornado watch very, very soon here in the next few hours. Because areas affected parts of southwestern through north central Oklahoma and adjacent portions of northwest Texas and south central Kansas. Again, as well, like I said, right here, a weak surface cold front has stalled south of Wichita, Kansas, southwestward into areas near east of Childress, Texas. So, like I said, if it stalls the cold front and does not kind of sag to the south, we're going to be watching out for really widespread and concerning threats for Oklahoma City and the metro with surface-based supercells, and again, those kind of hail-based and as well wind-based, elevated storms will most likely quickly become surface-based and becoming a huge tornado threat across the OKC metro and beyond. So it's going to definitely be a pretty big concern that this cold front does not interfere and as well decrease in moisture return and as well advection. But of course, due to the initially modest moisture relatively to the warmth of the elevated mixed layer, latest objective analysis indicates that the warm sector boundary layer cave remains fairly weak at around 500 to 1,000 joules per kilogram. However, it appears that this will begin to substantially change during the next few hours, obviously, as we get towards that diurnal heating there. But of course, we'll be watching out for that southwesterly 500 millibar jet, contributing to the environment conducive towards organized severe thunderstorm development. It seems probable that this will include a rapidly upscale growing line of storms along ahead of the front by early evening. However, initial storm development may include isolated scattered discrete supercells, particularly in a possible cluster near northeast of the surface low and dryland across southwestern Oklahoma. Southwest relief flow in the 850 to, of course, 700 millibar layers and initially rather modest, but forecast to strengthen to 30 to 40 plus knots in the vicinity of the intensifying convective development, generally along the Interstate 44 and 35 corridors. Again, really watch out again for some as well low-level hodographs supporting strengthening low-level motocyclines, posing a threat towards tornadoes and as well severe hail. So pretty strong word in mesoscale discussion considering it's the first one for today. But of course, going to really watch out for the threat. Of course, for I'd say again, like I said, going to be really watching out for the threat for a PDS tornado watch, and then our main mesoscale discussion later today. But I also want to go over the day one as well advisory here. So looking at something very interesting is basically, let me see where it is. Look at this right here. Very large hail damaging wind gusts and potentially significant EF2 plus tornadoes will be possible. So EF2 plus tornadoes will be possible. So we're watching out for some significant tornadoes. We may not see a crazy amount of tornado reports if this upscales quickly, if this cold front does continue this, if it does start sagging south. But we're going to be watching out for potential really strong tornadoes. Initial supercells are expected to initiate over southwest Oklahoma near the surface low by around 22Z, which is we're kind of getting close towards, and track northeast toward the central Oklahoma, including the OKC metro area by 0Z. That's absolutely crazy. And as the surface cold front starts to surge southeast this evening, upward development into a fast-moving QLCS capable of producing widespread damaging wind gusts, tornadoes, and as well hail will sweep across central and eastern Oklahoma, and then of course moving towards Tulsa, and then moving eventually towards the very tip of the enhanced risk. Like I said, it's most likely an upscale, and that's why I'm not too worried about Arkansas or Missouri or even southeast Kansas for any 10% worthy tornado risk. Really, I think it's going to mainly just become really a QLCS mode. But of course, current indications are that the storms will begin to rapidly intensify after 21Z near the surface low in southwest Oklahoma. However, the morning cam solutions continue to suggest that discrete supercell development is possible near the low, and along the trailing dry line. These storms will be in an environment of rapidly strengthening low mid-level wind fields and vertical shear, steep lapse rates, and intense large-scale foresting. Forecast sounding hodographs in the warm sector would favor the potential for strong tornadoes, very large hail, and significant damaging winds as the storm tracks basically into central Oklahoma. So, I mean, we are watching out for a really, really intense day ahead. And just as I kind of get out the SPC outlook and the discussion, a tornado watch has actually just been issued. It's actually not a PDS tornado watch. It's actually just under. It's a 90/70, and it has to be an 80/80 plus to be considered PDS. So that is absolutely mental. I mean, it's most likely not gonna be an upgrade toward the PDS. It's gonna stay the way it is. But look at this description here. Several strong tornadoes are likely. Scattered hail up to tennis ball size likely, and widespread gusts up to 85 miles an hour. Over 3.1 million people, including 1,200 schools and 129 hospitals. I mean, this is including a large population, according, of course, all the way from Wichita Falls all the way up into Bartsville, Ponca City, Tulsa, Stillwater, Oklahoma City, Norman. Really, really strong, large cities. And then we still have, obviously, Ada, Durant, Allister, all those areas that most likely will get another watch later today here. But again, we have a tornado watch with just misses PDS criteria. But either way, again, it's a really strong worded tornado watch, which I'm about to show you guys the description. So first, here's the probability. We have a high chance of tornadoes, a high chance of EF2 plus tornadoes, and a high chance of... We have basically 5 highs and 1 moderate. So this is basically a PDS. I mean, it's basically a PDS without having the description or the criteria of a PDS. This is obviously a pretty significant tornado watch, of course. I mean, we have high for basically all 5, or not all 5, but almost all 6, with just the 2+ hail being moderate, because it's going to kind of be a little bit more limited towards just southwestern Oklahoma. But this is basically, I mean, it's basically a PDS, but obviously it's not. But let's now go ahead and get a look now at the overall description here. Let me actually get out of there for a second. So let's go look at the overall description for this. So, of course, watching out for several tornadoes and a couple intense tornadoes likely, widespread damaging wind gusts, isolated gusts at 85, and, of course, watching out for scattered hail, large hail events up to 2.5 inches. As well, watching out for supercells capable of strong tornadoes and significant wind damage are possible, especially along the I-44 corridor. I mean, this is just an absolutely crazy event. I mean, this is a very, very highly worded tornado watch. So, of course, we have a 90% for 2 or more tornadoes, a 70% for 1 or more stronger with EF2 or EF5, 90% of probably 10 or more severe wind reports, which would be obviously within 65 knots above, and then a high is 70% for probability of 1 or more wind events, basically above 65 knots, which would be considered severe. And then, of course, watching out probability of 10 or more severe hail events, which would basically be more than 2 inches. That's a 70%. And then, of course, the moderate. This is the one moderate we have, and that's our probability of 1 or more hailstones. And, of course, combined of 6 or more severe hail wind event is basically above 95%. So definitely really, really high probabilities. So let's now look at the latest H4 or HRRR. Before I actually end this video. So I'm actually going to make my screen a little bigger here so you guys can get a look at when I look at sounding. So let's move my screen like that. So here's now look at the latest HRRR. And I mean, there you see obviously kind of a little initiation along the dry line there. But let's go back. So by 22Z, when those storms are going to start initiating in southwest Oklahoma, going to be mainly surface-based supercells. Obviously, they're going to be seeing that 500 millibar obviously support, and the 5 millibar jet and the 850 millibar jet kind of basically going up like that. So, really intersecting across the warm sector, you're going to start seeing some initiation. Obviously, very favorable dudes as well. Overall, starting to see the diurnal heating kicking in, but we're going to be seeing some really good supercells developing across southwest Oklahoma near Long. Going to be seeing some really large hail, and as we get toward around 23Z and 0Z, that's when these storms are going to start transitioning into the tornadic mode. and becoming as well. Kind of starting to see that transition from basically elevated to surface-based supercells. As we're gonna really watch out for the downtown Oklahoma City metro area. Look at that; they're basically gonna get hit within 0Z, basically just past 0Z, and by as well 0-1 or 1Z. Downtown Oklahoma City, Norman's gonna get absolutely hammered. As we're gonna watch out for a mini kind of squall line developing across portions of Texas. Gonna watch out for DFW to most likely get some significant wind gusts, as well as some large hail. But this is going to be the big threat right here. Watching out for multiple surface-based supercells that could very well produce all three threats: tornadoes, winds, and hail across Oklahoma City metro. And obviously, it's most likely going to become upscaled by 3Z. We'll be seeing a chance for some embedded supercells, specifically across northeast and east central Oklahoma, as we're going to be watching, guys, just mainly for a wind and hail threat for Texas. Going to be seeing a mini squall line going all the way down near Austin, Texas. But going to watch out for a chance of some surface-based supercells embedded within the squall line, but it's going to get kind of upscaled by 3Z, and that's why we're going to be seeing that threat for Missouri, Arkansas, and northeast Oklahoma. But Tulsa should definitely watch out the possibilities for some extreme wind gusts here. I mean, look at this really intense squall, and that's going to kind of just upscale. But let's now look at the overall theta E wind bar, so you guys can see the amount of instability we're talking about here. It's going to be a pretty serious amount of instability. So right now, there you see the overall drawing starting to set up, basically starting to develop as we get in the next few hours, and then of course starting to push into portions of the panhandle of Texas by 21Z. That's when we start seeing that initiation kind of starting to develop across southwest Oklahoma. So you see some temperatures of 100 and 350 Kelvin temperature, obviously, and by 0Z, there you see that really, really good looking warm sector. Obviously, there you see kind of those basically southeasterlies. That's some really good wind bar movement. That's going to definitely be favorable for tornadic supercells. But let's now look at the overall sounding here at 23Z near southwest Oklahoma. And this is actually not too shabby of a storm. You can see some really, really intense veering here. I mean, it's actually extremely intense veering. You see the clear southeasterlies, 2500 Cape. This is actually not, I mean, look at that, 114 knots at 8 kilometers. This is really absolutely mental support in the wind barbs. This is obviously all three impacts. That's all three impacts sounding, as well. Going to be watching out for a little mini squall going on across Texas. They're going to be watching out chance for some embedded potential tornadoes there across that squall as well in North Texas. But going to be watching out for the main time frame towards 0Z. I'm going to watch out for this chance. This is a little slightly contaminated, but other than that, it's a pretty good sounding there. Seeing a really good inverted V sounding, really good wind threat, as well as seeing a really good amount of instability, a -8 lifted index, really strong veering, pretty as well enhanced hodograph. But now, as we get towards 1Z, going to be starting to see some really good conditions across the overall portions there of the OKC metro. But let's now look at the overall now dew point here. So you guys can get a look at the dew point as well, what we're seeing dew point wise. And let's now look at this. So right now, there you see that really intense dry line starting to build up there when that surface low is developing. Look at that really, really intense dry line across southwest Texas, or yeah, across western Texas. And there you see, of course, that 850 millibar jet obviously building up there. You see that surface low, and there you see, of course, that warm front starting to build up there across northern and portions of central Oklahoma. There you see some really good dews, 71-degree dew points. I mean, a lot of these soundings are contaminated. This actually exits out right there, but I mean, looks like 1Z, basically right over OKC metros, where we're seeing the highest dews. I mean, this is obviously contaminated, but we all know this is some really intense photographs, really enhanced photographs, as well as some really good initiation going on. But a lot of these, like I said, are pretty contaminated. And then, of course, by 2Z, you can watch out for a pretty significant threat. Now, a little bit further towards the east of OKC. And at that point, we're going to watch out for some supercells, basically near the Norman area, and then pushing towards the east. And at that point, it's going to all just become a linear mode by 5. So you can watch out for basically a squall line, and it's going to be absolutely terrible tornado threats, but pretty good. Of course, you kind of see some slight inverted V sounding, so you can watch out for some pretty good wind profiles across northeast and towards Tulsa right there. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy the video, and see you guys. Hope you guys stay safe.